3, 2, 1, start.
Well, we've had an amazing few days together. Thanks a lot to all our speakers and all the people who presented their case studies. Now we're about to go into the live section of the programme. We're going over to the studios in Hartlebury in the West Midlands in the United Kingdom. All that's left for me to say is goodbye, and I've always wanted to say this, over to the studio.
Hello and welcome to ICE Live. I'm Dale Parmenter, CEO of DRPG, and we're here in our Midlands headquarters where all of the ICE broadcasts have been coming from during the week. We also have offices in London, Windsor, Leeds and Belfast. In addition, our overseas offices are in Dublin, Cologne and the USA. So the building was built in 1938 as part of the war effort and used to store Merlin engines for Spitfires and ammunition during the World War II. We bought it in 2012 and it took us 6 months to convert it into what it is today, the largest corporate communication facility of its kind in the UK. And you can see more development work going on as we're coming to the closing stages of building our comms, design and creative centre. So let's go inside and have a look around. Okay, so let's go inside the studio and join Anita for the next session.
And welcome back to ICEWEEK. We're so excited to be here in Hartlebury, and thank you very much, Dale, for the introduction.
To the studio.
Absolutely,
yeah.
We're here, we're live, we are. So, you know, we've all been on this journey and it's been so interesting. So I've been in events 30 years now. And what I find really absolutely amazing, I thought, one of my friends many years ago said to me, do one thing that scares you every day. And what's really, really amazing, I thought I was living this, I thought I was doing this, until now, obviously, that dreaded pesky virus came along. And the excitement of actually, obviously the trauma of actually doing it, but the excitement of learning so many new things is just absolutely brilliant. So I'm so pleased to be here. So, and thank you all for being here. And this week has been absolutely brilliant. Thanks to DRPG, obviously, it's been just brilliant. And being in a live studio is just so exciting.
You have been very excited today.
So I literally, be very excited. So before we start, Dale, we've obviously got the Q&A session for the keynotes that we had during the week. We're always trying new things, so we've split the Q&A up so we could have a bit of live studio time. So let's see how this goes. So I'd like to introduce the panel to you, if that's okay, because obviously you've seen their presentations. So first of all, we're going to get a few faces up on screen. So welcome panel. Now, I must remember not to look at the panel, but to look at the camera. So first of all, may I introduce, obviously, Bonnie. I'm sure a lot of you have heard his brilliant presentation earlier on today and what's happening with Cisco. We've also got Stephanie, and what can I say, Stephanie? It's been an inspiration just learning so much from you and how to handle failure and success, which is fantastic. And then obviously we've got the wonderful Joost and Guy here from Philips, and I'm simply overwhelmed by the kind of the exhibition and the stands that was done. It was brilliant. So now I'm not going to be chairing the Q&A session, but obviously I would like to chip in as we go along.
Absolutely, you're very welcome.
We're going to do one at a time, if that's okay, so
Yep.
we don't get too many, because we've got a lot of questions coming in.
Yep.
What I'd like to say, if you can make sure and keep posting questions, and I think it's, if I point my finger
just down
downwards,
below us
down
here.
the bottom
Yep.
is the Q&A, the questions, so we can keep posting them live. So shall we first of all say thank you very much again, speakers, and we're over to Bonnie. Perfect.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Anita. So yes, please post your questions and they'll come here onto the iPad. So yeah, we're going to start with Bonnie. I thought a great equation, the education, experience and engagement equals loyalty. But I think you threw a bit of a challenge out to anybody else who could put another equation in. You give them a cookie. Well, Frankie did, and it's exploration, discovery and experience equals return attendance, in brackets loyalty.
Yes.
So there we are. So a cookie on the way to you, Frankie.
Okay.
But on that point, Bonnie,
Yeah, we actually said we're going to put it up for the judges to decide if that's a good enough formula to replace mine. But anyone who dares to come up with any formula that works for them it deserves a cookie for sure. That's right.
Okay. So up for the judges there. Let's see
Right.
any more coming in as well throughout this session. But on that, in terms of particularly experience, when we look at the real event, the hybrid event, is the experience different, or how do we make the experience the same for those two audiences? You know, somebody at home maybe watching on their laptop, somebody in the auditorium or at the real event.
Yeah, I think we should not, and I think we cannot actually deliver the same experience when you're at home, when it's online compared to in person. But I don't think we should look at it as trying to mimic or copy the same experience. I think we need to start ideally from a blank canvas and look at it, based on all the cumulative experience we all have together, mainly from live events, but try to think in a different way. What does the experience mean for online attendees? And again, I think personally for me, I don't have the answers because I've been involved purely with, in-person events for the last 8 years. But it's clearly, and I've been hearing it from a couple of my colleagues that, from my perspective, this formula, the E+E+E, and especially the experiences is probably the experience is the toughest one or the most challenging one to replicate or to focus on in an online offering. And again, if we look at it differently, so don't think of the experiences we generate that are generated or that we push or foster in an on-site and in-person event, but look at it from a different perspective. And I think actually this week has been a good example of some experiences. I know it's very different, but this is just one example. So bottom line, don't try to think of an online event as a copy and paste of an in-person event. I think that won't work, and the experiences should be different.
Absolutely, and try and engage those virtual people or those people who are online some way, shape or form so they can have an input.
Yeah,
I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
Really important.
I think what was really interesting is that doing this ICEWEEK this week, it's been all the different methodologies that you can actually achieve. And it'd be great as a community if we started feeding back some of those ideas. It'd be really good, I think.
Absolutely. Right, another couple of questions here from Guy. He realises that it's your event is sponsor funded. You may not want to answer this, but I'll put it out there. But what is the total budget or cost of Cisco Live if we were to create something similar?
So just to be clear, is that coming from Guy Loomis, the other presenter?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I cannot share the exact figures of how much does it cost us to produce and deliver Cisco Live. But I can say, it's definitely not a cheap event. We do break even from the point of view that, we get to spend everything that we get from our sponsors and our customers that attend the event. I can share that the split between sponsorship in terms of the revenue coming from sponsorship versus the revenue that we get from the attendees that are paying to attend is roughly 80-20. The majority is not coming from the sponsors, but it's coming actually from the customers and partners of Cisco that pay to attend. And they pay to attend because it is of a lot of value for them to come for the week. So if you generate the right value, they will come, they will pay. And obviously, the more you get, the more you have to spend on. But I can only, let me share with you one figure. Okay, the cost for the food and beverage, the F&B costs for the event was close to 4 million euros.
Wow.
Okay, so that could give you an estimate of the total.
A lot of food and beverage consumed there.
Well, it's not just a lot. Remember that there was this hospitality piece in the other formula that I used. So it was a lot of food and beverage, but it was also good food and beverage.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the cost was a bit higher maybe than the average.
And I always like to say that actually if you think your piece of comms, whether it's an event or whatever it is a cost, then you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah. It's an investment, and you should be seeing a return on that investment. So I hate the word cost on there. Another question from Frankie, actually. How did you test the person for COVID-19?
That's easy. We didn't. It was, and I think I mentioned it, when we went live, it was the last week of January. There were no measures in place. There was no real fear or there was an awareness that something is going on in Asia Pacific and specifically in China. There were still no reported cases in EMEA, not to mention Spain. And we had the event in Barcelona. So we actually didn't have any specific measures back then. In hindsight, maybe it was a mistake. Again, we were lucky that nothing happened and that the whole epidemic arrived just when we probably closed our doors. So we didn't have anything.
It was just totally new to us all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no one expected.
Question here from Alistair. He says, really interested to understand how the last few years of Cisco Live and the journey you have taken in creating a genuine out-of-the-room experience has laid the foundation for mid-post-COVID world. In short, are you less scared of this disruption than others?
Well, I'd probably say I'm personally more scared, or at least as scared as anyone else, because we can't really foresee the future, so we don't know where this is all going, right? But I think those past few years' experience we've gained with Cisco Live is giving us this level of confidence that if there's anyone who can make this change, it's us, not just the Cisco Live team, but the team I'm working with our production company, event agency, with George P. Johnson, and with like-minded, like people that are here on the call on this in this week. We have the skills, the know-how, and the tools to do it. I don't think I would say I'm less scared. And again, if a good friend of mine asked me, so what's the big deal if you don't do Cisco Live for a year and you just skip a year? So my immediate answer to him was, I would lose my job. But actually, it's not about me losing my job. It's more about, what's the importance of continuing offering those events and those experiences, and more than anything else, the education and the engagement to our audience. Okay, we need to maintain this level of interaction and keep live this level of relationship throughout the year, not just at the week of the event, but through the entire year. And the things we've been implemented and started around 4 years ago with this relatively small piece of broadcast from the show floor of the opening keynote and some key highlight sessions and a lot of stuff from what's going on the show floor, that has increased year after year into something pretty, I would say, fundamental as an offering as part of the event. Still not the core. So if you remember at the beginning of my presentation, I did mention that we do have an online program, but it was never the core part of the event. We still know from now, based on what we've done, we know from the experience gained, the tools that we used, and the feedback we got from those audience that attended online, what we should be using, or at least we have a good starting point to evaluate. Obviously, it's pretty abrupt, the move from, let's say, 100% physical to 100% digital, but we have some know-how to start with.
Absolutely. And talking about working remotely. There's a question here about how do you get the creativity happening remotely?
Well, I don't think creativity has any limitations in terms of space or a clear formula, how you can bring creativity to the team or to whomever it is in events, right? I think it's more about the culture that is part of how do you work, how do you operate as a team. And if you allow if you allow people, I think I would relate to what Stephanie mentioned. It's all about, celebrate failures, not only success. Hopefully less failures and more success, but it's about, even in a remote fashion, and we at Cisco, especially me and my team and a lot of us, this culture of remote working has been around for many years. So for me personally, the impact of staying at home and working from home was nothing, because I'm doing it for the past 10 years. I hardly ever go to the office. My office is my home, and work is what you do, not where you go to. And you can do it remotely. I don't think there's any hurdles if you provide your team and the agency that you work with this level of confidence that you're allowed. And I tell them always, you have the freedom to fly high, to go as far away from Earth as you want, to go to the atmosphere, reach new heights, as long as you know how to land, right? So come back with creative ideas, create these ideas. I'm always telling my team, and I'm one of the first to come up with ideas. Many of them are stupid, but I'm continuing, and I'm always telling them it's great. It's better to have 100 bad ideas and one good idea than have no ideas at all, right?
Absolutely.
So creativity for me, it starts with this level of trust that people are empowered even to think outside of their own area. So within events, we all have our own responsibilities and clear roles. But especially when we work, my team with George P. Johnson, we're all sharing ideas on all other areas. So it's not that, hey, this is not your area of expertise. Don't tell us what you think. The exact opposite is what we're trying to foster within the team.
Absolutely. And we've certainly found, particularly with our creative teams over the last 3 months, actually they've collaborated better using the technology.
Yes.
And they've had thinking time at home, and then they've got onto calls, Teams, etc. And actually it's been really positive. Question from Robert here. Why do you set a 3-year tenure, you mentioned 3 years, at each venue? Why 3 years?
Well, one answer could be that I'm coming from Israel, and Israel, everything is divided into 3 or has 3 components, but that's actually nothing to do with that. It's more of a historical choice that we've been doing for Cisco Live in EMEA, but it's not something that we're not willing to look in a different way. We found it pretty like a formula that works for us. First year in a venue is always kind of a mystery. You don't know how it's going to work. You have the floor plans and the customer journey. So first year is like the year where you try out new things and you see how it works. And usually it works fine, but there's always room for improvement. Second year is when you bring a lot of the lessons learned from year number 1. You know better how to work with the venue team, with the caterers, with all the different suppliers. And the third year is, to a certain extent, a walk in the park, even though it's never a walk in the park, but it's the best year where you should get highest scores, best production, etc. And then it's about moving to another venue to start the excitement all over again, right? So to a certain extent, and I can be very open here, we did it 3 years in Barcelona at the FIRA. And from my perspective, I would have stayed there forever because it was the perfect venue for our needs, specifically for Cisco Live. The team there was amazing. The caterers, everything worked really to almost to a perfection. And I wanted to stay longer. But they didn't wait for us. They sold our slot to the Integrated Systems Europe event. And we said, okay, that's fine. We'll go ahead and look for somewhere else without looking back. I think our counterparts, our colleagues in the US, their Cisco Live US, they change between 3 or 4 venues that can host them. Sometimes you do 1 year there, 2 years there. So it's there's not any scientific or real reason to do it that way. We could change as well.
Okay. Another question about content. How big is your content team between Cisco and JPJ, and who does what?
So the core content team, it's basically me. I started at Cisco Live as the leader of the content program. That was my role for the first 2 years. But when I took the overall leadership, I still said I would like to keep my feet on the ground and still lead the content program. So I'm still doing that, and that's very close to my heart. Basically, the core team, it's me and the lady from GPJ called Penny, if she's listening. Penny Venter, she's doing a great job. So she's my right hand with anything that has to do with the content platform and managing the speakers. But then again, the actual team that is responsible for the content is about 30 people that Cisco employees that are doing it on top of their day job. We call them SGMs, session group managers. We have 2 or 3 per technology, and they're the ones who actually select. So each group gets an allocation of a certain number of sessions, and then they select the sessions, the speakers, and work with them on their sessions.
Great, thanks, Bonnie. I've got 5 seconds left, and so quickly from Robert Dunsmore, and he says extreme accessibility, extreme sustainability, extreme likability. Take it to the extremes. There we go. There's another
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you, Robert, on that one. And we've run out of time, I think. So thank you, Bonnie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie.
Thank you very much.
And we're moving over to Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. Right. So, some questions here. All worst case scenarios coming together. How did the change of command happen remotely? Interesting one.
The change of command. I'm not sure what that means.
I assume that when things start to go maybe a little bit wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I think it was like when things were starting to go wrong, at what point did the team come together maybe, and how did you make the decisions
because
to migrate?
You were remote as well as obviously all the audience.
Was it 13 areas?
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
Yes, it could only be remote for sure. But we had a remote staff room. We had a Teams call set up, and that thing ended up kicking us out after 4 days straight. So if you've ever tried to stay in a Teams session long enough, you'll know that it kicks you out after a while. We were already there all together as a group, including leadership all the way to the CMO, so that we were able to make the decision in a matter of minutes, if not seconds, when we realized that the platform wasn't up and running the way it should have been.
Yeah, and connected to that, a question here from Esther. How do you keep team morale up when something goes wrong, such as with the platform crashing? Particularly, I mean, if something goes wrong in a real event, you can all just get into a room and hug each other or do something, you know. But, you know, when it's all remote, how did you keep the morale going through that difficult time?
You know, the truth is when you're in the middle of the crisis, you don't have time to start thinking about how you're feeling, right? You're in it, you're working. It's really, really hard. We worked 20 hours straight, all of us, but we're not all in the same time zone. So we were really taking turns. And we had, those 20-hour shifts for several days in a row. So, the first 2 days, 3 days, we were just working nonstop to get things going the way they were supposed to. On the 3rd day, things were running, not, perfectly, but still really, really well. Feedback was starting to turn into much more positive comments, and we had a party, an online party. We celebrated because we had to. One of our colleagues is a very, very talented musician. He gave us a private concert, and we had great fun with some quizzes to get to know each other in ways that we might not have before. And it was just, we needed to have some fun, but more than anything else, the joy of seeing how everyone jumped in. No questions asked, no one complaining about not sleeping enough. That in itself was uplifting enough. I think it was actually quite an enriching week in that way.
And sometimes a situation like that actually brings the team closer together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Question here. Did you have knowledge of the YouTube channel? What are the pros and cons of using that channel?
We have a whole digital media team that helped us with that and social media, and they were able to help us set it up really quickly. A few of us, a few members of my team, including from the leadership team, just spent the night uploading videos. We learned really quickly how it worked. The pros are obviously that YouTube doesn't crash. That's what they do. The cons are you don't really know who watches what. You can't study behavior in the way that you would with your own platform with registrations. And that means two things. One, you don't get the direct and immediate feedback that allows you to adjust and make changes right away or in the future. And the other one is you don't get to study behavior and offer the appropriate kind of follow-up to the customers that are attending.
Absolutely. Question here from Catherine. How did you select the 13 cities and the hosts for each of the local events?
Oh, it was much more complicated than that. There wasn't 13 cities. Sometimes it was a country. More than that, it was very often a group of countries. So we had a German platform that covered Germany, German Switzerland, in Austria. We had French one covered France, and then Francophone Belgium and Switzerland, et cetera, et cetera. So it was clearly not cities. And then we didn't have one host per platform. We had one host per show, and each platform had a large number of different shows, and we structured the content into different topics, and each had their own set of hosts.
Okay, and in that situation, did you bring them all together as one at any time? Join them all together? No. So they're all separate. Yeah.
Yes. The content structure, the portfolio of SAP is so wide. We have different teams running each topic. And while we did make a point to have, from a branding perspective, some consistency, we had templates for all of the videos to have the same feeling. Each topic owner was free to bring in the content they want, the kind of host they want. So we had some pretty different styles going on and variety in the way the content was delivered.
Okay, yeah, fine.
I have a question just quickly.
Yeah,
just on the actual production, because the production values on the main sessions were just amazing. How long did that take to pull together? It's just experiencing what I'm going through today. I thought it'd be interesting to share.
From the moment we started actually writing the script and really pulling the people together, selecting the host and the guest speakers, to the moment that they were final and ready to be broadcasted and translated, 5 weeks. And that was really short.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
a lot of hard work there. And talking about content, same question Robert asked of Bonnie. He said, I loved your approach to value content driving everything. How big is your content team, SAP / Freeman, and who does what?
Very big.
Yeah.
We have a couple of people that are responsible for designing really the content strategy, which is the way we're going to structure it. But as I just mentioned, the portfolio is so wide at SAP that we have several dozen people that are content owners or neighborhood owners, and then each session has its own, whether it's a speaker or so. It in the end, if you dig deep enough, you probably come up with several hundred people.
I suppose in that short period of time, you need that sort of team to
absolutely.
pull
Yes,
that together.
that's true for the physical event as well.
Right, yeah, okay.
Because we have like 1,000 sessions around, give or take, depending on the year, but we divide and conquer, absolutely. And because, we have different experts talking about different elements. So we try and consolidate and we try and harmonize the way, the experience that we create around that content. But the content itself, it's very much divide and conquer, and we have a lot of players.
Okay, I've got a question here which actually can go to any of the panelists. How do you measure attendee satisfaction? Do you engage participants to conduct some quantitative sort of questionnaires or qualitative focus groups research. How do you know whether it's actually been successful and it's worked?
So historically, we've always done, pre-event surveys, post-event surveys, surveys in the app on site for each session. And as it happens, about a year and a half ago, SAP purchased a company called Qualtrics, and that's, experience management is now one of SAP's main focus. So we definitely include the Qualtrics team in the conception of the events to make sure that we can get feedback before, during, and after the event that allows us to take corrective measures either right away, it's too cold, we can, turn down the AC, or for the following year when it comes to things that are, the session formats, those sort of things that we can't immediately change, that we'll definitely take into account for the future.
Absolutely. It's so important to set those benchmarks in advance. Yeah. What are you measuring against? And if you don't do that, people maybe have just had a good time.
Yeah.
And what have the audience done differently? And how are we going to measure that? So sometimes it's not about asking the audience, it's about what have they done? And if they don't do anything differently, where's the value? I think that's the key to that measurement piece there. Well, we're just about running out of time. We are run out of time. I think we're now going to our next panelists. Thanks, Stephanie. That was great.
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Yes, and Guy. Hi there.
Hello.
Right. We've got quite a lot of questions for you two. Let's have a look. There we go. How many takes did it take from actors, the teamers, to get the final version, and did that affect the timelines and costs? How many takes did he get from the actors? Doesn't quite make sense, but I think it's how many takes to get the stuff done. Yeah,
because there's 600. I think there was 600 people. I think you were saying on the stand. Your whole team was 600 people, wasn't it?
So was there loads of takes, or you just took what you got?
One for you.
Yeah, so the full staff is about 600 people, and I think we had about 25 live actors on the stand. And before the show, we actually took them into a studio. They were all German actors because they needed to speak German and English. So we flew them in to London to bring them to the studio and shoot all the sequences that we needed for the projection mapping house. All the rehearsals up front were done remotely over Skype. And there was no spoken word in that, so that was relatively easy. It was just more giving directions. And then during for the big show, where you saw the same actors in the space, we had, I think, 2 rehearsal days on site. In different groups. So we had one group on one day and the other group on the other day. And before that, they had they got their lines and they were rehearsing also remotely, and they had coaching sessions with an expert that was also connecting through Skype remotely with them and coaching them, making sure that everything was good. And I must say it was very interesting. Some of them, we also made them dance. And I didn't know that, so that was quite interesting. So we all had a special choreography for every single group of actors, and that was also done on site. And most of them were really good. There were some actors that were really hard work, especially, unfortunately, the little bit older actors that we had. So that was an interesting experience. But in the end, they did an amazing job, and it all came together really well.
And a question here connected to that. How did people react to such a live performance? And did some of the visitors join in?
Yes. So that was very interesting. So as you might have seen in our keynote, Guy really hated everything, but the audience really loved it. And you saw actually, I think, two different reactions to it. It was very photogenic. So there were people that didn't want to get involved and they were just watching with smiles on their faces, but they were a little bit hesitant to really join in. And then there was the group of people that jumped into the scenes and they wanted to be the stars of the show. So they got our vacuum cleaners to do Speed Pro Max challenges. They went cooking. They get their hair done by the actors, or they jumped into the shower to have their photo taken. So you had really, I feel, two distinct reactions of the people, but in the end, it worked really well, and they were sucked into it really well.
Looked fantastic. Richard, who came up with the idea? Hi.
Yeah, I think
what was
I've
your
always
inspiration?
thought it would be a really great idea to rebuild a hugely immersive environment that you just walked into and just suddenly went into a different world. I think I've worked at Philips now for 4 years, and I've been to 4 IFAs. 2.5 of them I've run. I run the consumer area in the first year that I was there, but not the rest, from an experience perspective. And I've monitored very carefully. I mean, it's a huge event, right? So Sony has their own hall, Samsung has their own hall, Panasonic has their own hall, and Philips, and we've been there forever. And I really monitored what did they do with their customers, and I really wanted to identify what could I do differently with ours. And I also don't believe I have some of the budgets that they have. And the other thing is that the technology that they have is the real show. So Samsung with their VR headsets is just perfect to play around with and have fun with. And the mobiles, Sony, similarly cameras, etc. And Philips, we've got awesome products. We want people to use our Sonicare toothbrushes and our air fryers, etc. But the experience is not as big and bold and exciting. So it was, how do I differentiate what we do? And the key is to get people using our products, because Philips products are amazing. And so I could only think that the only thing I could do is just create something incredibly unique and different that they just walk into and thought was fun, engaging and surprising. And I think that is the brand that we also live with. That's what we belong to. We just make people's lives better. We make them happy. That's why we exist, and we make them healthy. So it just seemed to be the right thing to do. And in the end, I'm convinced everyone to go do it, which was why it was so surprising I hated it so much. But that's a different story.
And on that note, Alice just put a question in here. How hard of a sell was it to the leadership team to take this different approach? And obviously there was a potential risk as well. Is this trust built up over time, or the strength of the pitch to them?
I think it's both. As I said, we've been doing it for 4 years, and we've taken the team on a really big journey to really build experiences. And you can see that if you look at the past 4 years change over the Philips stand, and we did originally start with this story trying to show you the Philips stand for the last 4 years and how it's gone through evolutions of changes. You can see that we started with live kind of QVC type experiences to then more interactive and highly engaging. We talked about the tokens and making life better, individual experiences. And then we moved to sort of community environments, but actually we had staging where you stepped in and out of the stage, like fully digital type experiences. And I think we got lots of feedback from the competition, and I would say we don't really see each other as competition, but we got a lot of feedback from the other booths that said we were getting more and more experiential, more and more engaging, more gaming, gamification going on, more photo selfie stuff going on. And it was having a really big impact on how people were responding. In fact, we went from 30,000 to 40,000 to 50,000 people in those 3 years going through the booth. That was clearly remarkable. So as I said, it was a big journey, and the Philips leadership were watching that. And fortunately, we had the same leadership, and I think they had a lot of confidence in our team. We do a significant number of shows a year. We have an amazing team that sits behind running them, and I think that allowed us to be able to sell in the idea, which I think a lot of people wouldn't have been able to do, to take that risk. And they thought, you know what, if Guy and Joost and team are going to do it, they're going to make it work. So yes, I did want to throw up at one point in time before it opened, but in the end, if you don't take these risks and you don't go for it, and you've got to go for it in a really committed way, then you're never going to deliver on something extraordinary.
Absolutely. What were the reactions of the other exhibitors that were in the hall? Did you get any complaints?
Well, actually, that's a difficult one, because normally we do a lot of health system shows, and then you have a big hall and all your competition is around you. So IFA is there's a different animal. So all the big brands have their own halls, so people come in and out. It's much more difficult to go to really understand how other stands are reacting. What we did see is that some of the mechanics that we used the year before were now slowly being picked up by other stands, which is always promising. And what's also very interesting is that we had, we had a full group of Samsung people with cameras, and they actually filmed every little thing that we did, and we already knew that they were from Samsung. So, but it's not like we have a lot of conversations between brands at this particular show. I think we have that more in the health system shows that we do.
Robert's come up with another equation.
Yes.
Repeat, improve, dump. What would you improve? What would you dump?
Guy, you go for it.
It's an interesting one, because we took this booth off to the Computer Electronics Show in January this year, and the Computer Electronics Show in Las Vegas is a slightly different beast, because it is definitely more PR focused, since consumers don't go, although we would argue that everybody is a consumer anyway, right? So this is a good example, I think, of what we would improve and what we would dump. So we took the large scale consumer environment and we shrunk it down to a loft apartment. And we had the same couple going through different scenarios, but actually using the same sort of storylining. And one of the things we did was for example, with press there, we stopped and we went to photo shoots. So although they stayed in character, they said, would you like to take photos of us or etc. So we started changing the way that we were interacting, because we heard that the press found it particularly difficult at IFA to get the cover shots and photo shoots they wanted, even though they absolutely loved the in-environment that we created. The other thing that we did was we focused a little bit more on the science behind the technology. So one of the things that we created at IFA was a retail store, and we actually had our German staff that work in the Philips retail stores work at it, and it was just fantastic. They were the most enthusiastic people to go there I've ever met. But one of the things that missed then was that we didn't focus on the science behind why the technology is so good and what makes us so unique and special, and why it's so much better, because there's always a way to make life better, right? So why it's so much better for the customer than some other technologies. So we had these little hot desks where we introduced science behind the technology, and then we created experiential elements to that so that people could quickly learn and understand that. So there's more of the value as well as the fun, engagement, and obviously usage of the products too.
Last question. Have you got plans for next time?
We always have plans.
Would you repeat it? Would you repeat it again?
This particular setup, elements of it. I think it's about you keep you keep the things that really work. You do that, and then you introduce new elements. So I think definitely the way that the spaces looked like was very nice. To present our solutions in a context worked really well. I think the experiences that we have everywhere, so the ability to really play, I think that's going to be one of the big challenges in the coming period. So typically we are really touch and experience. And with COVID, we need to be much more careful, and we also will need to assess how people will react. Do they still want to brush their teeth on a stand? Do they feel comfortable? Do they really feel comfortable creating food, even if COVID would be behind us? So where are we? So we're a little bit in that discovery mode for that. But yeah, I think the storytelling going really immersive is very good. I probably would create a little bit more variation in how we treat the different areas. Also to avoid, one of the challenges was a lot of sound pollution, because it was a lot of with mics in different places, which made it very difficult. So if we create a little bit more variation in the spaces, then that would probably work better for us.
And Joost, I think the other thing that's super important now is that we turn it into a big live TV studio. So I think one of the things that we will look at very carefully is what is the production that we need to do on booth to turn it to virtual and take it to the masses. And that's something that we're looking at broadly across everything that we do with COVID and all the changes. And I don't know why the stands can't go live just as well as any of our other digital environments that we create around the world.
Absolutely. It really lends itself to.
Absolutely, yeah.
So thank you both.
Thank you
Brilliant,
very much.
fantastic project. Well
Absolutely
done.
fantastic, thank you.
So we run out of time. Yeah. So thank you to all our panelists. Great stories. Great projects. Well done to all of you.
And I want to say thank you so much. The content, the feedback we're getting from our virtual audience is absolutely brilliant. And the sharing that better together, the information, they have just loved it. So thank you. And we've actually, all the sessions are live on YouTube as well. So we've got a lot of people coming to have a look at them as well. So thank you.
And they'll be on catch up as well. So,
absolutely, absolutely.
Great. So we're out of time.